camera out my face.
I know I got hands rushing.
I know I'm getting too. Like that, right? That's what I'm talking about.
Ryan, you don't get this goddamn camera out my face.
How are you gonna set yourself apart from what they're looking for?
Historically, New York has always been at the forefront of everything.
Right.
And it just came to, I have a friend, she Haitian, she from New York, and she said she was catching a train, like elementary, I think. She was catching a train to school before she was in middle school. Like she was, that's crazy to me.
Right.
To let your child go get on the train, go to a whole, I guess, borough or wherever. If you gotta get on the train, to me, it's far.
Right.
So I'm saying, do you think you all being forced to not only grow up early, but that's a whole nother level of responsibility than just from me having to walk to the corner to get on the bus and go to school?
Let me tell you. I grew up in New Rochelle for the most part. Me and my mother moved to New Rochelle around, I think I was like around 8 years old, 9 years old. At 10 and 11 years old, I was introduced to heroin.
Like, you tried it, or you mean just
tried it
at 11 years
11 years old. You know, but in that era, 1966, right, that wasn't uncommon. Like nowadays, you would look at it and you would say, wow, you know, boom, boom, boom. But in 1966, heroin was, like cats smoke weed now, that's how heroin was in the streets.
But who, I know it was in the street like that, but who would actually fucking have enough gall to teach a 10-year-old how to shoot heroin? You shot it or you sniffed it?
Both.
Which one you do first?
I think I smoked weed first.
No. I'm saying with
I
the
smoked
heroin,
weed first.
With the heroin, did you sniff it first or did you
Sniffed
shoot
it first.
Okay.
Skin pop later.
Okay. Now,
You
did
know.
an adult teach you how to do that?
An adult meaning like somebody over 18?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
This was like another kid my age who had older brothers who was getting high.
That's crazy.
You know what I'm saying? So it's deep. I had a lot of friends die. A lot of friends die overdosing off of heroin. You know, it was at that, like before something becomes an epidemic, it's not looked upon as bad. Just like crack. Before crack became an epidemic, when people were freebasing, and they called it freebase, and then they called it crack. When poor people started doing it, it was crack. Even in the early years, oh, that motherfucker smoked crack. That motherfucker smoked crack. In the early years, you would still look at a person as a person. You know what I'm saying? But then once it became an epidemic and it spread and you saw the destruction that it did, that was years afterwards. You know what I'm saying? That was like maybe like crack might have came out in the early 80s. In the late 80s, that's when it's epidemic. That's when that's when people are addicted and you see the destruction it's doing to the community and the society. And then that's when it becomes more frowned upon. You know what I'm saying? Heroin was the same way. You know, you didn't really see the destruction until the mid 70s of heroin.
Now with heroin, they say crack was worse.
Now let me say this, right? Me and my friends, we weren't addicts. We was like, you know, kids experimenting with shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, we wasn't out robbing and stealing every day to get high. You know, we'd fuck around and buy a bag and 10 of us would get down on a bag. You know what I'm saying? Sniff. And then, you know, I wasn't really like heavy into it because, and I'm gonna say this on tape, I ain't afraid to say this on tape, right? I was afraid of my mother. You know what I'm saying? Right. My mother had a big presence in my life. You know, where I had other friends, you know, they got more into it, you know. And early on, I was like, you know, this shit ain't for me. You know, so like around 13, 14, I was like, man, you know, I ain't fucking with that shit.
Now that's,
you know?
that's crazy you said that, because I have a friend that's on heroin right now. And he says the thing about heroin is, when you first start off doing heroin, if you do it like maybe one day, then you might do it like a Thursday, or you might do it like a Sunday, you can kick it.
Right.
But he said, if you keep doing it,
right,
you can't kick it.
It's rough.
Yeah, he said, but it's an easy drug to kick if you don't do it consistently.
Right, right.
You agree with that? Was that a reason you was able to kick it?
Well, there's a lot of psychological shit that goes along with it too. There's a lot of psychological shit that goes along with why somebody would even take it in the first place.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Me and my friends, we started out of peer pressure. You know what I'm saying? Wanting to be cool, wanting to be down, boom, boom, boom. You know, we see a lot of the older cats, you know, they would sniff some heroin or shoot some heroin, and, you know, they'd be at the party, and it's gonna sound crazy, but they was fucked up. They just look cool, you know what I'm saying? And that's the lure. It lures you in. And then before you know it, if you have any type of psychological issues, any stress or anything like that that you're dealing with, you know, and people think kids don't have stress. People think kids don't have psychological issues, but they do. You know, like I'm telling you, I ain't know my father. I grew up with just my mother. I see other cats, they got their father in the house. You know what I'm saying? I'm reconciling that shit. You know, my mother was such a strong presence that really didn't fuck with me as it might have somebody else of a lesser constitution. You understand what I'm saying? So if you had other psychological issues that you was dealing with, that heroin became stronger, and it led you to, like, you know, fuck that, I'm gonna get high today. Fuck that, I'm gonna get high tomorrow. You know what I'm saying?
Let me ask you this. Were you consciously thinking about, damn, where my pops at?
No.
Okay, so you think it was just a subconscious thing you couldn't recognize at that moment?
What do you mean, subconscious thing I couldn't recognize?
Like, it was like you was acting out, but you didn't really know why you was acting, like you said.
I don't think I was acting out more because of my father not being in the house. I think I was acting out just to be down with the cats I was hanging with.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like I said, it was more peer pressure. You know what I'm saying? And I might have gotten high maybe like 10 times in my life. But the thing about it is, it started at 10, 11 years old.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
So you was just giving a father example as a reason a person might.
A reason, right.
Necessarily your
No, it wasn't my reason.
Okay.
It was just a reason why a young kid might want to use heroin to escape. Like, when heroin became that epidemic, they had all type of outreach programs and this and that, boom, 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 and they would discuss it in school because it was affecting kids too, you know what I'm saying? And they didn't want kids to get into it. And at the time, when I was young, when they would talk about reason people would use drugs and take drugs and get strung out on drugs is stress. And I didn't know what the fuck stress was. You know, I'm 10, 12, 13 years old. I ain't know nothing about no stress. You know what I'm saying? And escapism, you know. People want to escape a reality. They don't like the reality they living in. That heroin, that's your man, that's a hell of an escape from reality. You know what I'm saying? And that's what gets people caught up in it.
And this is what I noticed, just sitting here thinking about it and knowing like half my family is on heroin. And what people not addressing is, if you look at it now, heroin destroyed us more than crack?
I would say that
Because there's more people on heroin today than crack.
well, you know what happened, right?
Crack never left.
Crack never left. Black people moved from heroin to crack.
Back to heroin.
Back to heroin. Now it's the opioid. Now they're calling it an opioid issue.
Right.
You understand? Back in the day, it was a heroin issue. It was heroin, and the withdrawal mechanism from heroin was methadone, right? A lot of people don't realize that heroin was a withdrawal method from morphine. Back in the day, before heroin became big, people was getting high on morphine. They was getting strung out on morphine in the 30s and the 40s. Heroin was like, okay, we'll get you onto, because the withdrawals from this shit is intense. The withdrawals, if you have a morphine addiction, the withdrawals from that shit was so intense, it was killing motherfuckers. So they had to wean them off the morphine onto the heroin, and then the withdrawal from the heroin was a little more tolerable. You understand what I'm saying? But then they found this other drug, they developed this other drug called methadone, which they would move the heroin addict onto methadone and then withdraw him from the methadone. You understand? So black people moved, when I say black, in the inner cities, it moved from the heroin to the crack. The white boys were staying on the heroin. You know what I'm saying? That's why it wasn't getting the publicity that it was getting. A lot of white folks was getting high on heroin.
So you think that this whole time white people been on heroin the way they are now?
Yes, without a doubt.
So
let me tell you something. Since I moved down south, and where I live in the south.
Now I know meth, for sure.
Yeah, you talk about methamphetamine?
I'm saying I know they've been on that since
Right.
like the 80s.
Right.
So you saying you don't think they ever quit?
No, white folks never quit the heroin.
So how did they hide that? And why do you think they coming out saying it's a crisis now? If they never quit, I guess we can.
You know why? Because I believe it's more and more of them are dying, and the pharmaceutical companies are involved in it.
I got you.
You understand what I'm saying? You got the big. Back in the day, the heroin was coming in, they was smuggling it in, chopping it up, boom, boom, boom. Now, they done synthesized it with this oxycodone, oxycontin, all these pain pills, they call them pain pills. I'll give you an example. A lot of your athletes, right, come out with addictions to pain pills. All those pain pills are is like really just synthetic heroin. You know, they're all depressants. Your drugs fall into, I think, like 3 or 4 categories: stimulant, depressant, and hallucinogen. You understand what I'm saying? So, a lot of these athletes get hooked on those. Heroin is a depressant. You know what I'm saying? Crack is a stimulant. Cocaine is a stimulant. You know, a lot of these athletes was hooked on those pain pills, which is nothing just like another synthetic heroin. That's all it is. You know, and a lot of them are strung out of that. A lot of white folks is on them pain pills like crazy. And the pharmaceutical companies is now feeling some heat because it's their products that's killing these people. You know what I'm saying? And it's destroying families, white families. As long as it was black folks, they didn't care. Because in my opinion, that was by design. You know what I'm saying? They bring those drugs into the black community. It's not until they spill outside the black community that it becomes a problem. And that's the issue. It's spilling outside the black community.
Camera out my face.
know I got hands
Cut it off.
rushing.
I know I'm getting too.
Like that, right? That's what I'm talking about.
Ryan, you don't get this goddamn camera out my face.
How are you gonna set yourself apart from what they're looking for?